Hello students. As you know already, our digestive system is divided into mainly two parts, right? One is the alimentary canal that we studied in detail already, and the another one is glands associated to alimentary canal. That means they are found attached to the alimentary canal, which plays a very important role, in the entire process of which one? Digestion. Such glands we call them as associated glands. And the very important associated glands of our alimentary canal are in our oral cavity region. We have which one? Salivary gland. Okay, as you come down in the wall of the stomach, there is gastric gland. On your right side of the abdomen, there is a largest gland called liver. On its opposite or below the stomach, we have a leaf-like structure or a gland called pancreas. And in the wall of the small intestine, there is intestinal gland. So remember that. In this session, or when you speak about associated gland, you are going to study these 5 important glands. Okay, now let us begin first with which one? Salivary gland. Where it is? Salivary gland is present just outside the oral cavity. It is a cavity, right? In that cavity, nothing is present. But outside the oral cavity means this wall lining the oral cavity, the muscles of the cheek, right here, the muscles lining the oral cavity, in this layer region, you will find which one? Salivary gland. We have 3 pairs of salivary gland. Please don't say 3. What is your answer? 3 pairs of salivary glands are present. They are the number 1, parotid gland. Okay, number 2, before going to the second one, let me first begin with parotid gland. Is a salivary gland which is the largest salivary gland out of the 3 pairs. Where it is? It is present in this muscle. Can you see? In your cheek muscle, in front of the ear pinna, here in front of the ear, in the cheek muscle, in this region. Okay, if you just take out the skin, if you peel out the skin, just below this skin, in this muscle, you are having one gland. What is that gland called? Parotid gland. Is that clear? It is a salivary gland which produces saliva, and parotid gland is the largest salivary gland present in front of ear. Note down, front of ear, in cheek. In cheek it is present. Okay, followed by that, the second pair of salivary gland is sublingual gland. What? Sublingual gland. Name itself tells. What do you mean by lingua? Lingua refers to tongue. As this gland is present above the tongue or below the tongue, supra or sub, it is present below the tongue. That's why it is called sublingual gland. Where? Can you see this muscle? Please try to understand. This is my jaw. This is upper jaw. This is lower jaw. Below the lower jaw, here, not here, okay, at the center, not below the lower jaw. Try to understand. Below the tongue, in this muscle here, I have one pair of salivary gland on either side below the tongue, and this pair of salivary gland is called sublingual gland. What is the location? Your answer is below the tongue. Okay, it is present below the tongue here in this muscle, right? We have one pair of salivary gland. Number 3, the third pair of salivary gland is present below the lower jaw. This is lower jaw here. Okay, no confusion. In front of ear, in the cheek, you have the first pair of largest salivary gland called which one? Parotid gland, try to recall the concept. Second pair of salivary gland is present below the tongue, here at the center, whereas the third pair of salivary gland is present below the upper jaw or lower jaw. Lower jaw, here in this muscle, if you peel out the skin, you will find my which one? The third pair of salivary gland, which is called submandibular gland. What is that called? Submandibular gland, because lower jaw is called mandible. I repeat, lower jaw is called mandible. Below the mandible, as I have salivary gland, it is called submandibular gland, or it is also called, another name is submaxillary gland. You have to remember both the names, okay? Maxilla actually refers to upper jaw. Okay, it is below the upper jaw. Below the upper jaw means not in my lip. Once again, it means below the lower jaw only. The famous or the most common term is submandibular. Guys, mandible means what? Lower jaw. You learnt a term. Upper jaw is called maxilla. This gland can be also called submaxillary gland. Your always answer is what? It is present below what? Lower jaw. Okay, not upper jaw. Better you say below the lower jaw. So these are the three pairs of salivary gland. All these three pairs of salivary gland are not present in the oral cavity. They are present just outside the oral cavity, in the lining of the oral cavity. Is that clear? It is a 3-mark question. They will ask you, mention the different types of salivary gland with their position or location. You have to write this. Very important question. All these three pairs of salivary gland together produce a fluid. ಈ ಮೂರು ಗ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಗಳು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ, right, they all together produce a fluid. That fluid is released to my oral cavity. Right now, when you imagine, if I say here, see, we are, right, you are seeing me just through this media. When I just say pickle, uppinakai, what is happening in you? Saliva is produced, right? No, right? When I say pickle, when you imagine the pickle, when you hear the word pickle, automatically what is produced? Saliva. Who produce? The salivary glands present in this muscle. But through a duct, say for example, whatever the salivary gland it may be, okay, out of three, these are the imagined salivary gland. ಯಾವುದು ಬೇಕಿದ್ರು ಆಗಿರಲಿ, through a duct. ಇದು ಅದರ ಏನು? Duct. This is the gland. The gland produce saliva. The saliva passed through the duct and released into my which cavity? Oral cavity. Is that clear? That fluid we call it as what? Saliva. That fluid is called saliva. The saliva is rich with what? Water, of course, right? Without water you can't. Whenever water content in the body decreases, saliva production also decreases. When saliva production decreases, imagine madi, saliva production decreases, mouth become dry. When the dry sensation occur, you start a thought or a feeling called what? Thirst. They are related, right? No. So the saliva is rich with water. What else is there? It has few ions like Na plus, Cl minus is also present. Very importantly, it has an enzyme called what? Salivary amylase. Mark this as very important. ACE, I told you, it is a protein or enzyme, or it is a carbohydrate. It is a enzyme because there is a suffix called what? ACE. The enzyme present in the saliva is easy to remember, salivary amylase, which is commonly called ptyalin. Okay, P silent, ಹೇಳುವಾಗ P silent, but spelling P ಇರಬೇಕು. What is the common name? Ptyalin, but NCERT calls it as salivary amylase. What is the job of this enzyme? This is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. Note down, it is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. Our food, Rich with carbohydrate like starch, glycogen, rich with protein, rich with lipid, rich with nucleic acid, right? No, other ottige vitamins are present, other things are also present, but very importantly, the food having carbohydrate, starch, glycogen, such carbohydrate, guys, not proteins. Carbohydrates are digested or broken down by the enzyme called what? Salivary amylase. It is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. Common name is ptyalin. Along with these three, our saliva also has an antibacterial enzyme. Try to understand which enzyme? Antibacterial enzyme. Do this enzyme digest, break down carbohydrate? No. Protein? No. Lipid? No. What? It break down what? Bacteria. Mouth is the one which is exposed to oral environment. I don't know, you are seeing me through your gadgets, electronic gadgets. How many of you are sleeping there by opening your mouth? I don't know, right? When you do that, what happens? Or in general, my mouth is exposed to environment, the environmental bacteria will enter to my mouth. Right now, when you have food, when you drink water that has some bacteria, to kill those bacteria that enter to my oral cavity, my saliva as an enzyme called what? Antibacterial. Hesare helta unto what? Against the bacteria. The bacteria is killed by the enzyme called, one mark question, lysozyme. Very important. Name the antibacterial enzyme present in saliva. Your answer is lysozyme. Carbohydrate digesting enzyme in saliva. One mark question. Your direct answer is salivary amylase. Along with this, it is a neat question, also appeared question. Along with that, saliva also has an antibody. Antibacterial enzyme is different, antibody is different, but both fight against the foreign particle like bacteria and virus that enter to my mouth. Is that clear? I repeat, both are different, but both fight against the foreign particle that enter to my oral cavity. Now you will ask me, if it is the case, when I have this, why not coronavirus when enter to my mouth, it is killed, right? Usually that virus inhaled through nose. Sometime it can go through oral cavity also, by touching eye also it can enter. If corona enter to my mouth, how I can get infected? There are some viruses and bacteria which can fool them. I definitely agree. These are very good to fight against the foreign particle. They are the best barriers in my saliva. But there are some bacteria, some viruses like corona. What can happen? They can easily escape from this and enter to my body. Is that clear? But anyhow, in general, guys, try to understand the antibody name is IgA. One antibody called IgA, lysozyme annuva antibacterial enzyme, both are present in our saliva along with the carbohydrate digesting enzyme called salivary amylase. This is all about the first associated gland. What is that? Salivary gland. Let me continue with the next one. What is that? Gastric gland. Salivary gland is over. Now next one, gastric gland. Okay. Okay, don't just listen or just go through the video. You have to note down the points. You have to recall. Hope you have purchased the NCERT. If you have it, just go through it also. Okay. The 2 years are very precious for a student who plan for MBBS. Okay, you have to start your preparation right at the beginning. Many will do a mistake. What? They will think that we will study later. No, that is not right. If you are really an aspirant of NEET, try to learn from the beginning itself. Be a fresher, right? Start from the fresh knowledge. Now you have a lot of time to study this. Make this concept perfect. When you enter SR, you should be filled with everything. Your brain, cerebrum should have all these knowledges. When we ask the question, you should be able to, answer that. Again, there is no question after coming college, you will study. No, nothing like that. You should enter, you have to step into the college with preparation. Clear? Now, let us move on to the next gland, gastric gland. Where it is, name itself tells. In biology, gastro refers to what? Stomach, alwa, right? It is in the wall of the stomach. It is not outside or inside the stomach. It is in the wall of the stomach. I already told you, wall of the stomach and other regions are lined by how many layers? 4. Recall, what are they? Outermost layer called serosa, followed by muscularis, submucosa, mucosa. Now one more question, it is present in which layer? It is in the mucosa. That's why gastric gland is called mucosal gland. It is not in the submucosa, not in the muscularis. It is in which layer? Mucosa. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇದನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರೀತೇವೆ? Mucosal gland. It is a gland that is made up of gastric gland. Note down, gastric gland made of, okay, a gland na olagade made of 3 types of cells. How many types of cells are present in the gastric gland? 3 types. Mark it as a very important 3-mark question. What are they? The first one is, okay, the number 1. The first one is peptic cell, or it is also called what? Cheap cell. I repeat, number 1, peptic cell, or it is also called cheap cell. What is its function? This peptic cell produces 2 types of enzymes. They are, one is, I hope you can recall this, what is that? Pepsinogen, and another one is prorenin. I repeat, peptic cell or alias cheap cell produces 2 types of enzyme. Number 1, pepsinogen, number 2, prorenin. Remember, these 2 enzymes are at the time of release from these cells, they are in which condition? Inactive. They are not active. They can be called as what? They are inactive enzymes. And usually in our body, not only here, wherever it may be, if the enzyme is inactive, inactive enzymes are also called proenzymes. What are proenzymes? Proenzymes are the inactive enzyme. The 2 inactive enzymes are pepsinogen and prorenin. Later, at the time of action, when it is supposed to do its action, it should be activated. How it is activated, that we will see in the later session. Okay, and one more very important thing, these 2 enzymes are what breaking down enzyme? They are protein digesting enzyme. Okay, see, both the enzymes break down protein. Remember one more point, in our alimentary canal, if any of the associated gland is producing protein digesting enzyme, not carbohydrate, not lipid, no issue with them, only when the enzyme is protein digesting, at the time of release, adu release aguvaga adu protein digesting enzyme agidre, it must be in which state? Inactive. These inactive enzymes later, during the time of action, when it act on a protein, that time it is activated. Is that clear? These are the 2 protein digesting enzymes present in the juice produced by the gastric gland. What is that juice of the gastric gland called? Simple. What? Gastric juice. Okay, gastric juice. This is all about peptic cell. Number 2, the second one is parietal cell, or it is also called oxyntic cell. You have to remember both the names, parietal cell, or it is also called oxyntic cell. What is its job? its first job is to produce acid of the gastric juice. I'm sure you know that the gastric juice present in the stomach is acidic or basic? Acidic. Due to what? Due to the presence of, yes, very good recall. What is that? HCl, hydrochloric acid, right? Due to the presence of HCl, the gastric juice becomes acidic with a pH of, I will write here, with a pH of how much? 1.8, because of the presence of HCl, and this HCl is produced by whom? Peptic cell or parietal cell? Parietal cell, also called oxyntic cell. Along with HCl, okay, parietal cell also produces, very important, it produces intrinsic factor. Note down, mark it as a 1 mark question. Parietal cell also produces what? Intrinsic factor. What is this? It is a protein. Okay, what is its job? It helps in the absorption of, this is 1 mark question, absorption of vitamin B12. I repeat, okay, parietal cell along with HCl, it produces intrinsic factor. This intrinsic factor, okay, very important, it is helpful for the absorption of what? Vitamin B12 present in our food. What is the use of this vitamin B12? Vitamin B12 helps in the formation of what? Red blood corpuscles, nothing but RBC, ಕೆಂಪು ರಕ್ತ ಕಣಗಳು ಅಲ್ವಾ. RBC formation ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತಾದ್ರೆ vitamin B12 ಬೇಕು. This vitamin B12 is present in our food. Okay, that vitamin B12 when passes through my stomach and small intestine, in the small intestine what happens is, okay, even though this intrinsic factor is produced in the stomach or the gastric gland, when intrinsic factor and vitamin B12 reach my small intestine, the intrinsic factor bind to vitamin B12 and helps in the absorption. What is the use of vitamin B12? It helps in the manufacturing of formation of RBC. Now say for example, you have consumed a food that is rich with vitamin B12. Okay, but what I will do is, I will stop your parietal cell to produce intrinsic factor. Somehow, don't ask me how. Okay, somehow I stopped your parietal cell so that now it is not producing intrinsic factor, but your food is rich with vitamin B12. Now that vitamin B12 through food goes to your small intestine. Do it is absorbed? No. Because of which what happens? Why it is not absorbed? Yake absorb ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ? ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ this is missing. Is that clear? When it is not absorbed, production of RBC what happens? Decreases. Is that clear? These are the two things produced by parietal cell. ಇದನ್ನೇ 2 mark ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು. What is the function of intrinsic factor? 1 mark question. Okay. The third cell is mucous neck cell, or it is also called goblet cell. Okay, mucous neck cell, or it is called goblet cell. Name itself tells it produces what? Mucus. It produces mucus that neutralizes acidic nature of which one? Gastric juice. So I repeat, gastric gland present in the wall of the stomach, right? It is in the mucosa gland which produces a juice called gastric juice. Gastric gland is made up of 3 types of cell. A 3 mark question. The number 1, peptic cell or chief cell produces 2 inactive enzymes called pepsinogen and prorenin. Later they should be activated. Okay, they are protein digesting enzyme. Carbohydrate digesting enzyme of the saliva is salivary amylase. Is there any protein digesting enzyme in saliva? No. Lipid digesting enzyme in saliva? No. Is there any protein digesting enzyme in gastric juice? Yes. Is there any carbohydrate digesting enzyme in gastric juice? Answer is no. Clear? Along with that, one more point you have to write down. Peptic cell, along with these two, also produces one more enzyme called gastric lipase. Hesare heluva hage, it is what? Lipid digesting enzyme. But while at the time of release it is inactive or inactive, it is in the active form only. I told you only protein digesting enzymes are in the inactive. So peptic cell produces pepsinogen prorenin. Along with that, gastric lipase, which is a lipid digesting enzyme, which is in the active form. Parietal cell or oxyntic cell produces HCl and intrinsic factor. This concept is very important. Mucous neck cell or goblet cell produces mucus, which neutralizes acidic nature of the acidic nature of the gastric juice. This is all about gastric gland. In my next session, I will continue with liver, pancreas and intestinal gland.